Good morning, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. In today's update, a critical fuel pipeline is back in operation after being shut down by a cyber attack. Officials say it'll take days for fuel supplies to return to normal as states across the country report gas shortages. We have the latest on the rush to refuel and what we're learning about who's behind the attack. The CDC has given the official green light for children as young as 12 to get Pfizer's COVID vaccine. The approval comes after the FDA granted emergency use authorization for that age group. Meanwhile, Ohio is offering 5 lucky adults $1 million each in return for getting at least one COVID vaccine dose. The Ohio Lottery will conduct the drawings on May 26th. Prizes will be paid for with federal coronavirus relief funds. And the UN is warning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could be headed for full-scale war. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is urging staff to stay close to bomb shelters due to the threat of rocket attacks as the State Department tries to de-escalate the situation. Israel's military has launched airstrikes on what they say are Hamas targets in Gaza. Palestinian health officials say more than 80 people have been killed, including Hamas operatives, but also dozens of civilians and at least 17 children. Meanwhile, Hamas has launched over 1,600 rockets in the past few days, targeting the Tel Aviv metro area, where nearly half the Israeli population lives. The violence is spreading to other cities as well, where Palestinian protesters have clashed with Israeli police, saying they're being treated as second-class citizens. But we begin with that critical fuel pipeline back in operation almost a week after authorities say a Russia-based hacking group shut it down. President Biden is expected to speak about the situation soon, and we'll bring that to you live as it happens. 4 states are under state of emergency. In North Carolina, 70% of gas stations are without fuel, and Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia aren't far behind. Transportation correspondent Gio Benitez has the latest.
This morning, the restart. Colonial Pipeline announcing it has restarted operations 5 days after that Russian-linked hack shut down the massive 5,500-mile pipeline. But the ordeal isn't over yet. Overnight, people driving from station to station just looking for gas.
How many gas stations have you tried?
8. This is my 6th. Everything is like out of gas.
Gas Buddy reporting at one point 7 out of 10 stations in North Carolina were out of fuel, and outages affecting air travel too. At Charlotte's airport, they're trying to conserve fuel to avoid canceled flights, and Nashville International Airport's fuel reserves dropping to just 750,000 gallons. They usually have more than 6.5 million gallons. The outages aren't hitting every state, but in the last 24 hours, several states seeing spikes in gas costs, nearly 10 cent increases per gallon in at least 3 states. And now another concern, price gouging. This Virginia station charging nearly $7 a gallon.
6 gallons of gas for $35. That's absolutely ridiculous.
The White House eager to prevent attacks like this from happening again. Overnight, President Biden signing a new executive order aimed at improving cybersecurity.
Our thanks to Gio Benitez in Atlanta for that report. And as we mentioned, President Biden is set to speak about the pipeline cyber attack. Shortly, we'll bring that to you live when it happens. We're also learning more now about DarkSide. That's the hacker group that investigators say are behind the pipeline attack. Experts say they're highly skilled cyber criminals operating on the dark web. The hackers say they just want to get paid. Here's Trevor Ault.
This morning, top government agencies urging anyone in charge of critical infrastructure to up their security because of DarkSide, a team of what experts tell us appears to be veteran digital extortionists responsible for shutting down the Colonial pipeline.
DarkSide is a criminal organization, almost cyber terrorists, if you will, and what they look to do is to make money.
They're coming for it.
Sam Curry estimates half the companies his cybersecurity firm works with have fought off attempted ransomware attacks that DarkSide is known for, where hackers hold data hostage. It's like walking into a bank and locking the bank employees out of the vault and making them pay you to let them back in.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. And it's perfectly fair to say that data is the new currency in some ways.
While this is a substantial criminal enterprise, DarkSide claims to have a code of ethics, saying they'll never attack places like hospitals, schools, or nonprofit organizations. And after the Colonial pipeline attack, they even pledged to avoid social consequences in the future because, quote, our goal is to make money.
They act like fake Robin Hoods. They claim to even make donations, but let's be honest, it's not like they're robbing from the rich and giving to the poor.
Over the past year, ransomware attacks across the board have spiked 300%. And even if DarkSide only targets wealthy companies, cybersecurity officials fear other hackers may be more malicious.
The potential is growing for more disruptive attacks as our infrastructure is increasingly digitized. If a hacker can get into the system to potentially create a disruptive activity, possibly even catastrophic in terms of loss of life or loss of the actual infrastructure.
And the Institution for Security and Technology says last year there were 2,400 ransomware attacks on institutions like local governments, schools, and hospitals. And these attacks do not take much to succeed. It's why experts say it's so important you be careful with what you click in your email and routinely change your passwords. Diane?
All right, good advice, Trevor Ault. Thank you. And massive protests have broken out in Puerto Rico after a surge of violence against women and trans people. The island actually has one of the highest rates of femicide in the world, with nearly 1 woman killed per week. We'll take a closer look at what the government there is doing to combat the violence and why protesters say it's not enough. Stay with us. Welcome back. Massive demonstrations have broken out in Puerto Rico after the murder of a 27-year-old pregnant woman. It's part of a growing trend of femicides on the island, along with a rise in missing girls, women, and trans people. Puerto Rican officials approved $7 million in new funding for programs aimed at preventing gender-based violence, but demonstrators say it's not enough. Janae Norman has more.
Boxer Felix Verdejo Sanchez and alleged accomplice Luis Antonio Cadiz Martinez are pleading not guilty in the murder of a pregnant 27-year-old woman, first reported missing after not showing up for work April 29th. Charging documents state that Keishla Rodriguez was killed after telling Verdejo, who's married, that she was pregnant with his child. On April 29th, Verdejo allegedly punched Rodriguez in the face, injected her with substances using a syringe, and then restrained her arms and feet with wire. Her body was then tossed off the side of a bridge, Verdejo then allegedly shooting at her with a pistol. Search teams recovering the body days later in the San Jose Lagoon. Rodriguez's mother distraught. The suspects are facing federal charges of carjacking and kidnapping, resulting in the death of Rodriguez and killing her unborn child. Both are being held without bail and could face up to life in prison or the death penalty. This past weekend, demonstrations in Puerto Rico as demands for justice over her death and for the end to murder of women on the island grow louder. Puerto Rico's governor says they are addressing violence against women.
Que reconocemos que esto data de décadas, que lamentablemente es una cultura que hay que corregir. Hay múltiples medidas que hay que tomar.
We are infuriated with what's going on, but we also need to channel those emotions into political action.
Verdejo is a former Olympian representing Puerto Rico in the 2012 London Olympics. He started his professional career that same year in the lightweight division and has over 200,000 followers on Instagram. Keishla's family back home in Puerto Rico pleading for justice.
Quedarte callado, no se pueden quedar callados. Entonces, por miedo, por mi hija, lo que sea, yo no me importaba porque yo no pienso en lo que me pase a mí, yo pensaba en ella en ese momento y no tengo, o sea, el silencio daña muchas cosas.
Jenny Norman, thanks for that report. And it has been more than 100 days now since Puerto Rico declared a state of emergency. Observatory for Gender Equity is here with more on all of this. Deborah, first of all, thanks for being here. Walk us through how big of an issue this is for people on the island and how things got so bad there.
Well, thank you for the invitation and for making this issue visible nationwide. It is very dire situation. The organizations, feminist organizations in the island have been calling attention to this issue for the last 2 years, especially after the hurricanes Irma and Maria, because the situation after crisis tends to increase in gender violence. And we saw that increase, and we saw the need to begin collecting data so that we could actually prove to the government that the increase was happening, because the government was not producing numbers. You mentioned that $7 million were requested and allocated to combat this situation or to deal with this situation, because I don't like the idea of war metaphors. But we should mention that the Fiscal Oversight Board initially denied those $7 million because we are a colony, we are a territory of the United States, and this Fiscal Oversight Board actually has a say on the budget of the island. And this was one of the issues that the governor presented as an emergency and needed funds to be able to create the venues and to be able to allow the agencies to deal correctly with the issue. And the Fiscal Oversight denied those funds. And the only reason why they allocated them now is because the organizations went onto the streets and women went to the streets and started protesting what happened in the situation.
So what are leaders there hoping that this new $7 million in approved funding will do to help?
Well, what we have seen since the declaration of emergency is that there was a committee named Comité PARE that has been discussing as an interagency committee where several organizations, nonprofit organizations that work with women and have knowledge of firsthand issues of gender violence are sitting together examining what's going on in the system. What we can see is that the system is not working. Every agency in the system needs to make changes. And a lot of those changes require additional funding because many of the reasons they are demanding and they are providing is that there isn't enough funding to hire the needed personnel, and also that there isn't enough funding to provide the adequate training. A lot of the funding also is supposed to go towards public campaigns, which in Puerto Rico, there hasn't really been many campaigns to talk about gender violence. So there's really a need to create these educational campaigns that talk about what gender violence is and what we can do to avoid that, to change the way we look at gender and the way we look at social roles of women in society so that we can prevent, not just act when it happens, but prevent what's going to this violence against women and trans people.
But the state of emergency has been declared for 100 days now. So what else does that do to help address this problem besides this now new move of providing this extra funding?
Well, it actually brings everyone to the table. It actually creates a need and an effort to actually try to make changes. And all the agencies that are sitting now at the table have not really sat together with the disposition to actually make changes in the past. And that's what we really needed. That's what this is really providing, and it's providing this context to be able to say, well, this is something that needs to be taken care of. We can't just say, oh, we're going to take care of within the next year. No, it has to be taken care of now. Like we saw, you were talking about the case of Kishla dying, but actually, or being assassinated, the same day another woman was assassinated. And that case, the case of Andrea, actually showed how bad the system is actually, how much it's failing women. Because in this case, she did everything anyone will ask a woman that is in a situation of gender violence: go to the police, go to the courts, request a protection order, try to get a conviction for this person. She did everything, and she was denied every step of the way. And this became obvious. There were audio recordings where she was talking about how disillusioned she was on the system and how it had failed her. And we also were able to see some transcripts of what the judge actually said in her hearings. And it was just devastating to see how alone this woman was within the system. And that's the type of context and behavior that needs to be changed. And it's not easy change. It's not going to happen overnight, but we really need this gender perspective education and training, and for the system to actually develop appropriate protocols to act in these situations.
So what can people watching right now, what can viewers at home do to help?
Well, I think what people can do to help is talk about the issue in their homes, talk about the issue with their families, with their partners. I think a lot of what the movement is talking about is also the role of masculinities, the role of men in this fight. It cannot only be a fight of women alone. Men need to recognize where they are and what part they play in this process, even if it's not actively. And also just to make sure that to hold accountable the institutions that they attend to, especially if they're in places of privilege, because we need to be allies to the women and to the people that are trans, that are not in a place of privilege to actually be able to protest and demand that their rights be held upon. For example, we just had a legislation turned down. There was a legislation that where we were trying to stop and prohibit conversion therapies for people who are trans or are bi or are LGBT communities. That's something that is still in the island is being done by religious communities, but also by professionals. Mental health professionals are doing conversion therapy, where it's basically torturing young people that do not fit the standards of gender identity and want to proclaim a different gender identity. And this legislation was not passed. And what it does is it reifies the cultural beliefs that LGBT communities are doing something that is not right. And that is the type of belief that prejudices people and allows this gender violence to replicate. So those are the type of things that people can help pass those type of legislations that prohibit intolerant behaviors, that prohibit racism, that prohibits being prejudiced against communities, LGBTQI plus communities.
All right, Observatory for Gender Equity analyst Deborah Upegui Hernandez, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And right now in the U.S., tens of thousands of Americans are in solitary confinement. When we come back, we'll bring you the story of one man who says it nearly broke him, plus the new push for reform. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tens of thousands of Americans are isolated and alone for most, if not all of the day, in a jail cell. They're convicted criminals, many consider the worst of the worst, but some are in solitary confinement due to a series of events that led to harsh punishments, including the man you're about to meet. He spent 22 years in isolation, and he's now on a crusade to dramatically change this practice. Here's Lindsay Davis.
It's dark, and it's cold as a dungeon, psychologically anyway. The light is dim in the room, and it's very small, and it just seemed like the walls are caving in. There is no sound, and if you do hear a sound, it is seem louder than what it is because it's like an empty football stadium. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's loud and chaotic, like somebody just scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I was trapped in a cell 24 hours a day. Every once in a while, it might be 23 hours. Like I might get to go outside to what we call like a dog cage and be out there for an hour or so. But for the most part, I'm trapped in a cell. So the only way I was really able to engage with people and see other people and talk to other people was when I engaged in self-harm. It was extraordinary. I did have contact with people, but it was under extreme circumstances because I engaged in self-harm. But when I got out, it was much different because I didn't have to do the extreme in order to have social stimulation and human contact.
It's estimated there are 80,000 Americans in solitary confinement on any given day. Anthony tells us it nearly broke him.
You've talked about how it serves as a psychological killer. What is the worst part?
The worst part is being trapped in the cell 24/7, not being able to receive social contact and human contact.
When Anthony Gay was 20 years old, he got into a street fight. He was accused of stealing a hat and a $1 bill. He was charged with aggravated battery and robbery.
I had no idea that I was about to be tortured for decades.
In the state of Illinois, there are 6 different classes for sentencing a felony offense. Each one carries a sentencing range that varies depending on the class. But for offenses in classes 1 through 4, the judge has the option to sentence the defendant to a term of probation instead.
So they were like, if you plead guilty to the robbery, we'll dismiss the aggravated battery. So I'm thinking, I don't want to face 4 to 15 years for a street fight. So I plead guilty to the robbery and get 4 years probation. When I get out, I'm driving a car without a license. I get pulled over and I get arrested. My probation gets revoked for driving without a license, and I get resentenced.
He was resentenced to 7 years in prison, but it was after a fight while serving that time that he was placed into solitary confinement.
You had a fight, and because of just a fight, you went to solitary confinement for 22 years.
While I'm in solitary confinement, like I would cut on myself, they'll write me a disciplinary report, and it'd extend my time. I would act out, throw urine, liquids on officers. They would extend my time, and things of that sort. Like, instead of like allowing me to see mental health and taking it as a health concern, they took punitive measures.
Do you think that people underestimate the value of contact with other human beings?
I don't know if underestimate would be the appropriate word. I don't think people really understand it, that some people don't care and other people are not just aware.
It's really this very devastating and brutal way of containing people that breaks down the ability for people to do emotional regulation, to read appropriate social cues, and then people act out because they're overwhelmed and their brain is flooded and their hippocampus is shrinking. And when they act out, then they get more time. And so it becomes this like impossible cycle where people can't get out. I don't think there's enough dialogue about the consequences of what it's like for staff to look at humans in captivity every day and to look at what happens to them when they are enforcing these dehumanizing approaches to solitary confinement.
Representative LaShawn Ford is the Illinois House sponsor for the bill HB 3564, also known as the Anthony Gay Isolated Confinement Act.
When we learned about Anthony Gay's situation and how it impacted him mentally and what he had to do to get out of solitary confinement, it was devastating, and he immediately touched my heart.
10 years in the making, this bill would limit isolated confinement as well as allow inmates to have access to certain activities while outside of their cell.
What we're learning is if there's going to be some form of solitary confinement, it's our job to make sure that you don't keep people locked away for over 20 years in a solitary state. That's harmful, it's traumatic, and it only harms society as a whole because those people come back and they become our neighbors.
Okay, the chair recognizes Representative Ford to present House Bill 3564.
Thank you, Chairman. This bill is not to move past second. We will work with the department, with all of the witnesses to get an agreement.
I do want to emphasize what this bill does and doesn't do. It does not eliminate disciplinary segregation. It does not eliminate the department's ability to punish people. What it does do is say that every prisoner in the state of Illinois should be out of their cell at least 4 hours out of every 24 hours. And if they're going to put them in a cell for more than 4 hours, the limitation is 10 days out of every 6 months.
The bill passed through the House and is now on its way through the Senate. Across the country, similar bills are on the docket in multiple state legislatures. In March, New York passed the HALT Act, which limits time spent in solitary confinement to 15 days. And Washington State and Connecticut advocates are looking to soon follow suit. For Anthony, this is personal. Every day since his 2018 release, he's been advocating for prison reform for those who remain floundering in solitary confinement.
You said sometimes you still cry at night. What's causing those tears?
I know what it's like to be in there and be tortured. And I know that many people are still being tortured, and I feel guilty because I got out and they didn't. But I believe that if we can inform more people and more people become aware, then strength is in numbers, and we can compel them to take a hard look at this is domestic terrorism. this is psychological torture, this is a crime against humanity, and compel them to do something about it. It's wrong, Lindsay. It's despicable and it's horrible and it needs to stop.
Our thanks to Lindsay Davis for that report. And that does it for this ABC News Live update. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. Also, a programming note for you. President Biden is set to speak soon about the pipeline cyber attack. We'll bring that to you live as it happens. And we'll also see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran for the breakdown. Stay safe.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.